Burns and I watched over 200 movies last year. This is not a flex, this is a cry for help. Movies may not sound like a lot, and yeah, sure, statistically, it's not that hard to squeeze in a movie every other day or so. But in reality, I have a full-time job, friendships to maintain, and other hobbies to indulge. These movies ate my time. Also, I wrote little reviews for them on the movie app Letterboxd. It's better than IMDb in my opinion for like movie facts. You can find me there as Pluto Burns. This video is not sponsored, even though I wish it was. It would justify the amount of time I've spent on this insane little project. The point of this video is not to brag or, God's forbid, advise you on how to watch this many movies in a year. I think unless you are a massive film buff, 50 to 100 movies a year is a good number to shoot for. It's also not to rank them all comparatively. I did give them all star rankings in the app, but those are just kind of my feelings on the day when I watch them, and it doesn't even work mathematically. I use half star as my floor, with no stars reserved for a movie that I'm not really sure how to feel about. The point of this video is to take you on a journey, 'cause it was a journey. I can use this diary to track my life over the last year. We're gonna organize it roughly by month with some top 5 groupings at the end for funsies. There's not gonna be a mention of every single movie I saw. Some of them just aren't interesting, but I will have a link to a Google Doc that I used to make this video. All right, let's roll that film reel all the way back to January.
So, step right up and we'll all get started.
Well, Saturday night at 8 o'clock, I know where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna pick my baby up, take her to the picture show.
January started off strong with 2 animated adventures that I took with my boyfriend. We watched the Daft Punk musical Interstella 5555 and the extremely freaky German stop-motion version of Alice in Wonderland. The White Rabbit is a taxidermy who bites his own nails off. I was not expecting that. I also caught 80s and 90s anime obscurities Riding Bean and My. And it was also the first time I got to watch the Lego Batman movie. That one's really good. There was a strange combination of James Gunn movies. I saw The Suicide Squad, it's fine. And I also caught like an early script of his for Tromeo and Juliet. That dude has a really distinct style, even when switching from Troma to DC. I simply must draw your attention to this pairing here. I was hanging out on a Discord and someone was gonna start broadcasting Battlefield Earth, and I said to myself, let's watch this legendarily terrible movie while brain altered. And that was absolutely the right decision. That movie was hilarious while my head was all floaty. 10 out of 10, would recommend, had a great time. But then somehow the person doing the broadcasting had a super early copy of Mad God long before it hit Blu-ray or streaming. And Phil Tippett's stop-motion nightmare of shit and steel? Really not the kind of movie you should watch while brain altered. So that was a weird day for me. Not every movie I watched was a winner. Max Steel was a bad cartoon and a somehow worse movie. Club Vampire only escapes being the worst vampire movie I've ever seen because it at least had an interesting premise. The execution was unbearably cheap and awful. And then right at the end of the month, I found this movie called The Dark Backward. It stars Bill Paxton in full-on screaming annoying mode. The world is caked in grime and rotting food, and the main character's arc is mostly about bombing at comedy clubs, the most awkward experience in the world. I hated this movie so much. I bitched about it on Twitter, and the director found my tweets. He is out there name searching his decades-old movie and talking to people about it. What the fuck, man? Okay, so before we move on to February, let's talk about Popcorn real quick. Popcorn is about a film studies class putting on sort of a gimmicky horror movie marathon thing and then getting picked off by a slasher villain, and it's really good. It's kind of self-aware and funny about it. It's better than Scream for my money. Go find that one.
m'offense, bien mal acquis ne profite jamais. En grandissant au fil de l'existence, j'ai vu que ce n'était pas toujours vrai. Papa, 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 mais plus dans le coup, papa.
Now, with February as the state-mandated month of love, I tried to watch some romance movies. Romance movies aren't really my preferred way of enjoying romance content. I like them to have a little bit more room to breathe, like a novel or a TV show. But I caught some classics, Jerry Maguire, The Apartment, West Side Story. They were mostly fine. I also caught some obscurities like The Adjustment Bureau and Casanova. Those are pretty good. And look, it's not like I really stuck to the theme. My month started with City of Lost Children and Drag Me to Hell. So, yeah. But for Month of Love, I did watch Legally Blonde finally, and that movie's amazing. I loved it. Now, part of the reason this journey of movies was even possible for me is because I discovered I live near a film archive that rents out movies. And they have over 3,000 titles, and that's how I was able to finally see some obscurities like Robot Jox and The Devils on DVD. I didn't really like Robot Jox that much. It was kind of only good when the robots were fighting, but this is good robot fights. The Devils surprised me though. Like, this is a pretty infamous movie, but I was really engaged in the drama of the time period, even when there weren't naked nuns humping a statue of Jesus. On the more frivolous side, there was stuff like Space Truckers or the VHS version of Godzilla vs. Mothra. Yes, I have a VHS player. My boyfriend got it for me 2 Christmases ago. And that's how I was able to watch Blue Steel, a frankly terrible movie that leans hard on the propaganda. Probably the most obscure thing I saw this year was a stand-up special with Lily Tomlin from like the 70s. It was fine. You are not missing anything, but I really like Lily Tomlin. I grew up with her as Miss Frizzle, and I even got to see her live once. I also got to see some foreign movies. 2LDK was about 2 Japanese actresses living in a company apartment together, and the resentment just builds and builds and builds until it explodes in a third act worthy of Tarantino. Had a great time with that one. And then there was 8 Women, a French musical farce that's like if Clue was cattier and gayer. It was an absurd ride of joyous wonder. I cannot recommend that one enough. You need to see it. It was not all fun and games though. I finally saw Malignant, a 2021 horror favorite, and hated it. Hate. Yes, there's a lot of cheesy fun in that movie, but it's also a very mean movie, and it upset me. I had so many thoughts about that one. I was on a podcast describing them all and how I would have made the movie better. The podcast is called Film Rescue by Montresor Media. Go listen to that for my full thoughts. On to March.
The invasion has begun. But these aliens don't want a phone home.
One trend I noticed in March is that this was the first month I started logging movies I had already seen. Now, it's not like I set out on this journey to only watch new movies, but that film archive just spoiled me for choice. I watched childhood classics The Wild Wild West, The Mask, Scooby-Doo live action. I rewatched Captain Underpants, which way too many people skip. That's a fun movie. I watched Speed Racer twice this month in preparation to be on a podcast about it. That podcast was School of Movies, and the Speed Racer episode is one of the best podcasts I've ever been a part of. Go listen to it. I ordered myself a copy of The Adventures of Scamper the Penguin. This was one of those VHS movies I would watch on a loop as a child. It is a weird Russian-Japanese animation joint about penguins, and it's clearly supposed to be educational. The dub I had as a child and watched this time was a kind of a family-friendly Christian dub. The DVD box had a bunch of leading questions on the back about obeying your father, but like, the movie doesn't really have anything like that in it. They couldn't really cram it in. The story's not about that. It's fine. I'll probably never watch it again. It's really for kids. And I don't even have the DVD anymore. I donated it to the film archive because they didn't have a copy. This month had quite a few trashy exploitation movies. Blaxploitation film Black Mama White Mama was not nearly lesbian enough for my taste. And then the woman in prison film Five Loose Women seemed to think lesbian meant rapey. That movie was written by Ed Wood of all people. Baptism of Blood blew its entire load on the brain swap machine scene, and the rest of that movie was just so boring. Breeders was a very strange mix of 80s sexploitation and 50s sci-fi writing. I still don't know if that movie was fucking with me. The highlight of this was definitely Weather Woman, an insane movie from Japan about a weather woman who takes over an entire news station by flashing her panties on like live TV doing the weather report, and she like gets escorted to her office by men in thongs, and the movie ends with a giant battle for magical dominance between weather women. It was utterly badonkers. Check that one out. Just a couple more movies to mention for this month. I saw Turning Red and Tank Girl, fun movies. Await Further Instructions was really unnerving. Love and Leashes, BDSM romantic comedy, big fan, love a good BDSM romantic comedy. And then there was Titan. Okay, I really like the director's last movie, Raw, but this one's even weirder and more trans, so I appreciated that. Yeah, March was a good month. A lot of variety, mostly good movies. So let's hope April can keep that energy going.
Waiting in the wings.
The
He
universe
speaks of senseless things.
is so much bigger
Script is you and
than you realize.
Appropriately for a month that hosts April Fool's Day, I watched quite a few comedies like Beetlejuice. I don't know why anyone likes this movie. Beetlejuice is a sleazy bastard, and the cartoon was better. Day at the Races is a pretty classic Marx Brothers movie with some funny bits if you ignore the scene where they do blackface. A Fish Called Wanda is really underrated, and Death Becomes Her is quite good. It's got some really nice special effects, especially for the time, involving like zombie body part jokes, and they got a really different performance out of Bruce Willis. Check that movie out. Saw Galaxy Quest and Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, childhood classics that still totally hold up. Yeah, no, I'd say April was pretty good for comedies, Beetlejuice and his baffling popularity notwithstanding. But this month's highlight was definitely a movie I had been anticipating ever since I saw the trailer. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. What a superlative fucking movie, what a masterpiece of genre bending, what a goddamn film. Somehow mixing together kung fu action, sci-fi shenanigans worthy of The Matrix, some of the funniest fucking gags I've ever seen in a movie, and a heartfelt core about connecting with our families no matter how much our brain noises get in the way. I cannot recommend this movie highly enough. I cried in the theaters, I cried thinking about it later, and I almost cried while podcasting about it. It immediately shot to my favorites list and is just one of the best movies ever made. If you're at all into movies, someone in your life has told you to see this movie and you should listen to them. See this film. I also went on to catch the directors of EEAAO's first movie, Swiss Army Man. That's a neat film, really funny, good trial run of their genre blending and themes. It's not as good as Everything Everywhere All at Once, but it's solid. Did you know these guys directed the music video for Turned Down for What? As is usual for me, I watched some horror movies. Tetsuo 2 Body Hammer was neat, but not as good as the first one. Terror Vision has really lingered in my thoughts. That one's quite good. And finally saw some classics like Basket Case and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Was surprised how much I got out of those. One last thing I have to bring up. I caught this weird 90s thriller on VHS called Deceiver. Incomprehensible gibberish. It's an awful movie. The plot makes no goddamn sense, but it is extremely well cast. Tim Roth, Michael Rooker, Renee Zellweger? I've never heard of this thing. I've never heard anyone talk about this movie, and it's got these great actors in it. It's just a great example of how there are always these movies being made that have all the ingredients of a great classic movie, but aren't, and are quickly forgotten. Oh well, on to May.
Why do I take the things into the study? Wouldn't it be more natural if I left them on stage?
No.
I just thought it might be more logical somehow.
No.
May had some controversial takes for me on popular new films. I did not enjoy my time with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I know it was Sam Raimi doing his thing, but it was confused and kind of mean. I didn't enjoy it. There was also Belle. I really didn't like Belle. I know, it's the latest masterpiece from Mamoru Hosoda, the guy behind Summer Wars. But, look man, I get that you like using the internet as a metaphor for people finding their true selves and connecting over long distances, but your virtual worlds suck. There doesn't seem to be anything to do in these internets except go to pop concerts or fight in arenas. I don't understand how these worlds work. This was fine back in the early aughts, but it's the 2020s now, and you need to have something more cogent to say about what the internet means in a modern society. Of course, I watched some horror movies. Arachnoquake is a piece of shit to be laughed at, and I really didn't like the Evil Dead remake. Neat idea, poor execution. Finally saw Near Dark, a somewhat famous vampire movie, and yeah, parts of that movie absolutely slap. Like the part where they get into a shootout with the cops and are desperately avoiding the sunlight coming through the bullet holes. But the big surprise for me this month was a little obscure movie called Triangle. I was expecting a cheesy Bermuda Triangle movie, but what I got was a time loop slasher movie. I was blown away. High quality. You gotta check it out. I have to talk about Noises Off. I caught like half of this movie years ago on television, could not remember what it was called for the life of me, and I was describing it on a Discord and someone told me what it was called, so I watched it again, and it's this literal farce about an acting troupe putting on a farce play on stage and their performances slowly devolving into madness over the course of the film. I was laughing so hard I could barely breathe. It's got Michael Caine in it, Carol Burnett, Christopher Reeve. Oh, what a gem. Loved it to death. Jean Cocteau's La Belle et la Bête is still pretty good, and some of those effects are still downright magical. I also saw Pink Flamingos. Weird, gross movie. But I liked what it was going for, and some of that dialogue was downright Shakespearean. Finally, I simply have to gush about Different for Girls. For reasons I'll get into in the June section, this movie was brought to my attention and I knew I had to see it just from the description alone. This is a 90s style rom-com where a trans woman bumps into an old friend of hers from boys prep school and they fall in love. Now, it is a 90s movie, so the trans woman is played by a cis man. I did not give a single solitary fuck. I was way too busy squeeing in romantic glee. This movie made me understand viscerally the importance of representation. If a trans woman doing the Meg Ryan thing sounds at all like your bag, you need to see this movie. Whew, okay, gotta calm down. So I can get all excited again to talk about Pride Month! A major player in what movies I watched that year was the School of Movies Discord. It's a great podcast. I've made a lot of friends in the community, pluggo. But every other month or so, we do a movie watch-along month with sort of a theme. And June, the theme was gay movies. And I organized the list myself with suggestions from the community. Now, I tried to watch all of these movies for the sort of a queer exploration of cinema. I'm gonna put the link to the full list in the description. Not all of them were winners, unfortunately. Blue is the Warmest Color fucking sucks. It's way too long and leering, the epitome of a lesbian movie made for straight dudes. Similarly, Kinky Boots is almost entirely about a straight dude using the queer community as character development and financial gain. I've heard the play is better, but that movie fucking sucks. I didn't enjoy Gods and Monsters. It made me very uncomfortable, especially with what we now know happened to Brendan Fraser. And finally, I did not get My Own Private Idaho. I'm not saying that movie was bad, but I did not understand what it was going for, and I am a big enough girl to admit that. There are a lot of drag queen movies on this list. To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything Julie Newmar, opens with RuPaul as a Confederate-themed drag queen. So that movie starts as it means to go on, but god damn is John Leguizamo sexy as a woman. I didn't particularly care for the birdcage. It spent way too much time on the annoying straight children and not enough time on Nathan Lane being a glorious queen. Now, the winner of the drag queen subcategory was definitely Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. It's fun, heartfelt, and it has an older trans woman finding love in the outback. Gotta have those coming-of-age dramas too. Love, Simon it's way too white and middle class for my taste, but its heart is in the right place. I preferred the half of it, which is bisexual and acknowledges the fact that these characters are kids. They don't have to figure this all out right now. More teen dramas should do that. Bit was really fun. That's about a trans girl becoming a vampire, and the coven she joins is kind of catty, and I don't know, maybe we should do something about these hierarchies. And then I finally saw Moonlight. That movie was not made for me. It is really good and heartfelt, warm story about gay people, but it was not made for me. Go talk to some black gay people if you want fuller thoughts on that movie. You know, I thought Rocket Man was gonna suck. It came right after that awful Bohemian Rhapsody movie, but nah, Rocket Man is really good. Dog Day Afternoon is more of a bank robbery movie than a gay movie, but it has heavy queer themes. Really good. Short Bus is a very explicit, very messy movie, but I loved it. Y Tu Mama Tambien is a pretty good movie, but I just could not stop laughing because my parents had that movie in their DVD collection for years, and they would not let me watch it. Probably for the best. Of course, I watched Different for Girls again. Making this queer movies list is what got it on my radar. In a similar vein, Una Mujer Fantástica is a movie that I just had to see after hearing the description. It's about a trans woman navigating the death of her older partner and the institutional and familial disrespect that follows from that. That movie is not for everyone, but it was definitely for me. Finally, for Queer Movie Month, let's talk crazy shit. Benedetta is from the RoboCop director. It's about a nun falling in love with another nun and having Jesus visions that may or may not be real. And then there's The Handmaiden, a sort of crime thriller about two lesbians who eventually decide they're gonna do it for her. Both these movies are directed by men and pretty male-gazy, but they have way more right to exist than frickin' blue is the warmest color. I did squeeze in a few not gay movies this month, but the only one I want to talk about is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, the sequel to the CGI Michael Bay produced monstrosity. It's kinda good. It's a lot more toyetic. Bebop and Rocksteady are really fun in that movie. I don't know, they're just big bro boys. It was fun.
You remember me? Yeah.
I heard you lost your wife.
Okay, so June was a lot. I watched 29 movies in that 31-day month. And at this point in my journey, I was fucking exhausted. I took it easy in July and only watched 9 movies, most of them rewatches. I rewatched Mad God again, still not sober, but had more fun with it. I rewatched Spine of Night, another trippy animation movie from earlier in the year that I commissioned a podcast on. That kind of fell through, but I have no regrets on that. And I rewatched the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. That movie really holds up. Like, the puppet suits still look great, especially if you watch it on VHS like I did. Also tried some sci-fi movies this month, like Alienation. That movie's terrible. Like, what a boneheaded attempt at a racism metaphor. Seriously, bad movie. I also saw TNG First Contact. It's fine. I don't really like the TNG movies. They feel more like long episodes than proper movies to me. Hard Boiled was a freaking blast. John Woo makes me go, woo! There's a bit where a cop is carrying around a baby and then the cop catches on fire, so the baby pisses on his leg to put out the fire. Awesomely stupid. That movie is amazing. Finally, I watched a crime thriller called The Kiss of Death because it had Nick Cage in it. I don't know, I've heard people say it's good, but I thought it was really boring. Maybe it's because I watched it on VHS. Maybe it's just not good in that format.
There are no giants in Spain.
Perhaps you never went looking for one.
John Lithgow, Bob Hoskins, Vanessa L. Williams, and Isabella Rossellini see an impossible dream come alive through the eyes of Don Quixote.
August was another short month for me, but it was mostly new films that I watched. That was the month Prey came out, and that is a damn fine movie. Easily the best Predator movie that I've ever seen. And I say that with confidence, because just a couple days before Prey came out, I watched Predators. And wow, what a shockingly boring film. I caught the DreamWorks movies The Bad Guys, and that's really fun. It's a heist movie with slickly animated action scenes and some of the sexiest furry designs yet. I don't know how this movie isn't more popular. Shout out to the Tarantula Hacker Girl and her tiny laptops. I watched RRR with my polycule, and what a damn good movie that is. What a superlative film. I have some reservations about it, but they just pale in comparison to its extramost bestness. Action scenes to rival Mad Max Fury Road, musical numbers to blow your socks off, and a bromance for the ages. On a much more low-key note, I watched a wildly obscure Don Quixote movie starring John Lithgow and Bob Hoskins. This thing was made for television in like 2000, and the Film Archive just happened to have a VHS copy. It's not like a great spin on the story, but John Lithgow and Bob Hoskins were born to play these roles. I don't know how you would go about seeing this, but if you can, please do. It is a little marvel of a film. September was a month of smaller profile movies for me mostly, but I also made a new trans friend, and when you make a new trans friend, you watch the entire Matrix quadrilogy with them. Seriously, those movies are so fucking good. I actually started 2022 being on 4 podcasts about the Matrix movies. And yeah, the School of Movies podcasts on the Matrix are some of the best analysis of those films that I've ever heard. Yes, I'm plugging my friends again. Go listen to it. But the month actually started with a little autism adventure called Please Stand By, starring Dakota Fanning. I thought it was pretty sweet. I gave Rob Zombie another chance with Lords of Salem. Boy, that man likes putting his wife in movies. I thought The Vavitch was better. Also caught gay cult classic, But I'm a Cheerleader. That movie is everything Tim Burton should be, and isn't. On the completely different end of the spectrum, I watched some highly stylized action movies called Bunraku and Sukiyaki Western Django. Bunraku is a wildly well-cast action movie that's like if Sin City was a colorful pop-up book. But it also sucks, so that was disappointing. Sukiyaki Western Django is a Japanese genre blender that's very Tarantino-esque. This girl doesn't really like westerns, but yeah, that's a good movie. The weirdest movie I watched this month was Bubba Hotep. Okay, follow me on this one. Elvis Presley at one point switched places with one of his impersonators to take the stress out of his life. He fell off stage and into a coma and kind of woke up in the 90s in a care facility for old people where no one believes his story of being Elvis Presley. And then a mummy attacks the care facility and starts sucking the souls out of old people. How do you even come up with that? I enjoyed it a lot. I did catch a few mainstream movies. I saw The Black Phone, which was a favorite of the horror community in 2021, and yeah, good movie. I also saw the live-action Pinocchio. I didn't hate it, but I hate what it represents. Disney needs to be stopped. This is about when I picked up my pace again, because October is watch as many horror movies as you possibly can month. So, let's get into that.
I hope you're ready for tomorrow night and all the spooky things that frighten you. I know I am.
First things first, I watched the Fear Street trilogy on Netflix. These movies are extremely frustrating to talk about. Part 1 starts rough, gets pretty good, and then ends terribly. Part 2 was mostly dull, but then Part 3 was friggin' fantastic. But the only reason it was so good is because of all the groundwork done in Parts 1 and 2. So like, how the fuck do I recommend these movies? Do I just tell someone to watch all 3 movies and have a bad time for like half of that 6 hours? Ugh. Also on Netflix, I watched Hubie Halloween. I am not an Adam Sandler fan, but that movie is really fun, and it's becoming a yearly rewatch tradition for me at this point. October is also my birthday month, so some friends and I did a 4-movie watch night where we watched Psycho Goreman, The Bride of Frankenstein, Lavalantula, and The Ghost. All in one night. It was a great time. The Bride of Frankenstein is pretty good, and it hilariously undercuts the ending of the first Frankenstein movie. Psycho Goreman was a big hit with my friends. I knew they'd like it. They are huge Power Ranger and Sentai nerds, and goddamn, I love this little girl. She reminds me of Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes. Lavalantula is trash, but it was fun trash, and it was a weird Police Academy reunion somehow. The Ghost is a solid enough K-horror movie. New Hellraiser came out, and I liked it a lot. I'm all about trans girl Pinhead. Also saw that Netflix stop-motion film Wendell and Wild with Jordan Peele. That movie's got way too much going on, but it's damn pretty. You know what I didn't like? X. I know that one's been the buzz of the horror community, but I really enjoyed it when it was a porn drama, and I enjoyed it a lot less when it became a slasher movie. I caught some infamous movies as well. Plan 9 from Outer Space, Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter, finally sat down for all of Troll 2, but the trash movie I want to talk about is called Amityville Vibrator. This is a very accurate recreation of those 90s movies that were shot on VHS by complete amateurs who somehow convinced their friends to get their tits out. I found it weirdly endearing. Even though at only 1 hour long, it still felt way too long. One last thing, I watched a very unique French comedy called Playtime. Now I don't think I can sell you on this, but Video Game Donkey of all people made a video on it that sold me on it, so maybe go watch his video. It's only like 5 minutes long, way more manageable than this behemoth. November was my last break before Christmas movie month. I finally saw Back to the Future Part 3, which, I don't know, I just never got around to that one. I'm not usually pro-cowboy movie, but Doc Brown falling in love with a nerdy schoolmarm was really cute. Also, finally saw Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, despite having the DVD for like a year on my shelf. I really like the Bill and Ted movies. The way they handle time travel is really fun. Now that I'm laying it out, I see that I watched quite a few time travel movies. Because I started the month with The House at the End of Time. This is a Spanish horror movie about a house that does fucky-wucky, timey-wimey nonsense, and it's really, really good. It's pretty obscure though, so good luck finding it. I did quite a few rewatches in November, but I hadn't seen Pitch Black or The Descent in years. Those movies really hold up, especially The Descent. Parts of that movie still had me squirming in my chair. I finally got around to watching Stardust. Now, normally fantasy adventure stuff isn't really my bag, but holy shit, this movie is so good. Everything The Princess Bride was in the 80s, this movie was for the aughts. And it's so good. How is no one ever talking about this movie or the gay dread pirate Shakespeare? It's fucking ace. I can finally claim to be a true Gamera fan after seeing Gamera the Brave. I made a whole video about Gamera like a while ago, but I hadn't seen Gamera the Brave at the time, and this movie's really good. It leans into the kid movie focus of the earlier films, but with a really different tone. It's much more Amblin entertainment. Gamera is basically E.T. if at the end of the movie, E.T. has to fight another giant monster. I really enjoyed this movie. It's not like the best Gamera movie, but easily the top 5. And man, please, all the Gamera movies are on Tubi. Give the big turtle a chance.
マザーはね、宗教。ほにゃほにゃほにゃほにゃほにゃほにゃほにゃほにゃ。
Okay, we are in the home stretch. And I did not actually watch that many Christmas movies. I watched Violent Night in theaters, the, die-hard Christmas movie. That's pretty good. Me and my polycule, we watched The 12 Disasters of Christmas. That's an asylum one. And you know what? It's not terrible. We had a good time with it. It's cheap and low grade, but it's surprisingly good in terms of variety of terrible special effects. Normally these things have got like one effect, but this one like pushes the boat out for 12. My favorite Christmas movie is Tokyo Godfathers. I only saw it in like 2021, so 2022 was my first time rewatching it. It's so good. Hannah is the greatest trans woman in anime. The plot is a never-ending coincidence comedy fest, and the ending is so heartfelt and powerful that I was tearing up writing this part of the script. I'm almost mad at myself that it took me so long to get this movie in my life. The School of Movies watch-along for December was actually sci-fi movies. So, I watched some oldies, Metropolis, Bride of the Monster, Atragon. The only one that I really want to talk about is this strange movie called Night Raiders. This is a Canadian film about a future dystopia where the ruling government kidnaps children and conversion camps them to be soldiers. It is a not at all subtle metaphor for what Canada did to Indigenous children, and it really punched me in the gut. I caught a lot more new movies than usual. Bones and All I didn't really care for it. It's not the cannibalism, I just don't like tragic romances. Nope was fantastic. I do not know what we did to deserve Jordan Peele, but I am so glad that he is here. Glass Onion was really fun to watch with my parents, a lot more fun to watch than Death on the Nile, that's for sure. And finally, Matilda the Musical was a lovely time and very much appreciated by people who are much bigger fans of musicals than I am. The real winner for me was Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. This movie is so friggin' gorgeous. I love the way Guillermo del Toro constructs and tells stories, and he works equally well in animation. Between this, Mad God, and Wendell and Wild, 2022 was a damn good year for stop motion animation. Finally, before we move on from the year retrospective, I must tell you about Wormwood Apocalypse. This is one of the best zombie movies I've seen in years. It's like if Mad Max met Day of the Dead and Resident Evil. I can't even begin to describe to you how good it was. And it's a sequel! I didn't even know that when I started watching it. Oh my god, it's so good. They use the zombies to power their battle cars. Oh, okay, my throat is giving out, so let's do some fun top 5s before we, close this huge frickin' journey out. Let's start at the bottom with the top 5 worst movies I saw. Let's see. We've got Club Vampire. Terrible. Bad movie. So incredibly cheap. It has actual actors in it somehow, but no, it's awful. Don't even bother. Then there was Red Planet. I watched this movie entirely because Carrie-Anne Moss is in it. That's a bad movie. I don't know why I was surprised, but yeah, bad movie. Same writer as Barbarella. Number 3, Blue is the Warmest Color. You've heard my thoughts. Awful movie, not for the gays. Number 4 is Spy Kids 3D. Oh my god, what a dumbass movie. I can't even be mad at it. And finally, The Dark Backward. Look, I know I raged about it for a while, but it's at least got some craft and intention. whereas Club Vampire is just a fucking mess. So even though I was probably madder at The Dark Backward, it's not the worst movie I saw all year. Alrighty, top 5 obscurities. These were the movies that, like, I don't know how you would even hear about them without someone like me telling you about them. Number 1, Different for Girls. I fucking love this movie. I don't know how many more times I can tell you this. I don't know how you're gonna see it. Maybe find a copy on eBay. Number 2, Wormwood Apocalypse. I was literally at the end of Tubi's zombie list when I spotted this, and it kind of looked good, and it was so good! How was I supposed to know that? Number 3, Don Quixote. Again, how the fuck are you supposed to find out about this movie? I just saw it on the shelf at a film archive because that is genuinely the best way to discover movies as far as I'm concerned. But no one does that anymore. Everyone's on streaming. Number 4, Weather Woman. I don't know if this was really popular in Japan. It's not well known over here. It was only released in like the 90s. It is wild though. The absolute anime-ness of it all was a delight. And number 5, Gamera the Brave. Gamera is already a somewhat obscure monster in a somewhat obscure genre, but this movie is just like, hardly anyone's watched it. It wasn't included on my DVD collection of all the movies, supposedly, even though I'm sure this was out by then. It is on the Arrow video set, so if you got that, you can see this. Alright, because I'm such a huge horror buff, top 5 horror movies. Number 1, Us. I didn't really talk about this one because it was a rewatch, but I fucking love this movie so much. Us is my favorite Jordan Peele movie. Number 2, Mad God. I watched it 3 times this year, and it's so good. Like, it's not much of a story, but I just can't take my eyes off of it. It's enthralling. Number 3, Titan. This is such a weird body horror monstrosity. I don't know how to really talk about it. Number 4, Wormwood Apocalypse makes the list again. It's a really good zombie movie. It's not much of a horror movie, but it does so many interesting things with zombies. It uses them to power cars. There's this one half zombie lady who can like direct the other zombies like a sort of like RTS game. It's neat. And number 5, Nope. Jordan Peele again. He is very, very good at what he does. I know for a lot of people, Nope is gonna be their favorite Jordan Peele movie. I have a soft spot for Us, but it's still really goddamn good. Top 5 animated movies. Number 1 is Tokyo Godfathers. It's not flashy, but it's so heartfelt and I love it so much. Number 2, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Very flashy. Those stop motion animators are absolutely stunting on us with the fire and the water and the facial animation that's so smooth you can forget it's a puppet. Number 3, Lego Batman. What a surprise. Like, the Lego movies are just so good. Number 4, The Bad Guys. This one didn't go on the obscurities list because it's DreamWorks. It's too big to be obscure, but damn, no one talks about this movie. It's so good. And number 5, Alice. Remember this one from the start of the list? It's good. Like, it's freaky and weird, but it's good. Okay. I am running out of air. We're almost done. Top 5 best movies of the year. We're gonna go in reverse from the other lists. Leave you in suspense as what the best movie is. Number 5, Prey. It's just a damn good action movie. It's so smart in all the ways you want to be when making a sequel and setting it in a unique time period. Number 4, Stardust. I really enjoyed this one. It blew me away. Like, for some genres where I just don't really vibe with the genre, anything that impresses me just kind of gets on my favorites list. Number 3, Una Mujer Fantástica. I know I keep gushing about Different for Girls, but this one's really good. And it meant a lot to me while I was watching it. I really connected with this character. Number 2, Speed Racer. This movie is so fucking good. Like, I caught it years after it came out on DVD and I'm like, why is this so good? And now I just tell everyone I possibly can that it is so good, because it's amazing. And of course, number 1, Everything Everywhere All at Once. What else was it going to be? This movie is so good. It is instantly iconic in a bajillion ways, and it's going to influence filmmakers for decades. I love a movie where the entire crew came to play, left it all on film, and are actively being rewarded. This one's getting the awards, and I don't care if it does well at the Oscars. It's already #1 in my heart. Holy bugger balls, this is such a long video. I had a great time sharing all these movies with you. I love talking about media that I enjoy, and there's just something nice about like closing the book on this long movie journey that I took. So I don't know how many more videos I'm going to make this year. I'm very busy, but I don't want to leave this channel alone. You're all like cute, wonderful people as far as I'm concerned for sticking with me this long. So, mwah! Happy 2023. Let's hope it goes well.